welcome. This is your first panel. Welcome. We have a very special panel for you. Ask Me Anything, the publishing edition. So if you were ever interested in publishing, want to work in publishing, all these ladies are going to discuss. So join bookworkers Anabel Jimenez, which is the assistant marketing manager at Simon Schuster. Yona Deshommes, she's the CEO of Riverchild Media as a publicist. And Dominique R. Jenkins, assistant director, author events and services, Macmillan Publishers. They're going to discuss their day-to-day, ask them anything and everything about book publishing, moderated by our own Saraciea Fennell, senior publicity manager at Tor. So welcome, ladies.
Hello, everybody. What's going on? Hi. I didn't hear any clapping. I didn't hear any hellos.
I think they're
Are
hungry.
we awake? Let's wake up.
I think they're hungry.
Woo! Welcome to the 5th annual Bronx Book Festival. What's up? Are you excited to be here? All right. I hear them back here. I don't hear them in front of me. Are you excited to be here? There we go. That's what's up. It's not raining this year. I love the rain, so congrats to you all. I would have loved the shower right now. But thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to these wonderful book publishing professionals. Raise your hand if you want to work in book publishing or if you do work in book publishing. All right, we got a few people in the audience. Raise your hand if you never knew that it was, a job that you could have. That was past Saraciea. That was me. So no shame. There's no shame here. So let me see those hands.
Me too.
I'll raise mine. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got some wonderful publishing professionals here, and we're gonna jump right in. So I would love for all of you to first tell me how you learned about the publishing industry. I know for me, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do after undergraduate.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with my faculty advisor, and I was like, hey, sis, like, what comes next? Because I am not ready. I'm not ready for, the real world. I'm not ready to have to go on the job hunt. And she was like, well, have you heard of book publishing? And I said, no, what's that? And I went to undergrad at City College, and I was introduced to the publishing certificate program, and that blew my mind. So I was able to take a course on Intro to Publishing. I learned that it's not only editorial. There's publicity, there's marketing, there's sales. And so we have a wonderful group of panelists here who work in several of those departments and who have done a bunch of different things in publishing. But for me, that was how I learned about the publishing industry. And it took me a little while, but I narrowed down to publicity. So, I would love for Dominique to go first, and then we can kind of go down the line. So, Dominique, why don't you tell us?
So, I knew publishing existed because I'm a reader, right? But I was like, but how did these books get into my mom's house? And so I learned about it from Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis because she worked at Simon & Schuster.
Right.
And then I was like, well, I'm going to be like Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
Okay.
I'm going to be an editor. And then also, like, Stephen King is one of my favorite authors. So I'm like, I'm going to work at Simon, and I'm going to publish his books. And then I learned, going on. It took me, I started publishing late. I started at 35. Which, as an editorial assistant, is real.
Girl.
It's like, no, it's like you're your old maid. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
Right? And so I was like, all right, there are other things. So I started out in sales. Okay, you went to City and they did you good. I went to Lehman, they did me dirty.
I went to Lehman too.
Okay, there was no such thing as a publishing program. They were like, well, you can major in communications. I was like, okay, and you can go to like Brooklyn, and I was like, nope. So, I mean, I have the communications and communications BA, but like networking and paying attention, and then I went to Pace for my master's in publishing because that's a thing. And I was like, I don't have to leave New York. What?
Right.
And also I learned from professionals, not professors.
Right.
And my favorite professional was Denalyn Carroll, and she's like managing editor at Essence. And she was like, don't be afraid to as a woman of color especially, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. There is more to publishing than editorial.
Absolutely.
You can still do what you do and publish good things, right? And so I was in sales, and then I planned conventions, but I could still like get books into hands of people that I want to read them. And now I'm in author events, which still means I have the pleasure of working with authors like Saraciea, and I can still work to put books in the hands of my nieces and nephews, which is what started me in publishing to begin with. So
Amazing.
it is, you're able to do, like, to get into publishing and not be in editorial. There's more to it.
Yeah. Well, for me, my story is kind of a hybrid between what Saraciea went through and what Dominique went through. I was an educator. I was in special education, always loved books, would do things like, bring just really exciting, dynamic books to my students and actually get them to read because they were reluctant readers. And then I lost my teaching job. And then I was figuring, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I'm in my 30s at that point, and I just tried to figure out what I wanted to do. And I literally was on, I decided to go back to grad school to get my MFA, and I was on the school's website, and I saw a publishing certificate program, and I said, what's that? Same thing. So I started looking into it, and I was like, oh my God. So I thought I was going to be the next great editor, and I was going to find the next Alice Walker or Toni Morrison. That is what I aspired to do.
Okay.
Until somebody burst my bubble.
Oh,
Yeah, I went into a class, and I'll never forget it. It was John Jacino. Anybody who's an old head in HarperCollins knows John Jacino, and he was teaching a copy editing class. I would never be a copy editor, y'all, just not my thing. Side note. And I'm in the class, and he's like, asking everyone, did they have an idea of what they wanted to get into? So I proudly raised my hand and said, editorial. And he gave me this look like, girl. Oh. So now, as a sister, honey, I shifted in my seat and was like, what do you mean? And he said, calm down, girl. He's like, you got way too much personality to be in editorial. He's like, publicity, baby. That's your thing. Okay. And he was right. So, I took an intro to publishing course, learned more about publicity, and realized it was definitely more towards my personality. And I was the same as you. I started out as an assistant. I was already in my early 30s, and that's unheard of because most directors are in their early 30s, and the people that were my bosses were like the same age. Right. But because of my personality, and I'm always youthful, and I got that good.
We don't crap.
Okay, so I think a lot of people just didn't realize how old I was, and I just think it's just divine intervention. When something is for you, it's for you.
Absolutely.
And by the time I finished my internship, I already had my first job, and then one thing led to another, and I ended up at Simon Schuster for 13 years, where I left as an associate director of publicity, and had an amazing career. So and now since I've left then, and now I founded Riverchild Media.
Let's go.
Because once again, God said, okay, baby, snatch. You're too comfortable. It's time for you to strike out on your own. And, and I've been just doing the damn thing ever since. So I'm very blessed.
Yes. And she was one of my mentors early on. I was in her office.
Yes.
Pretty much all the time.
Okay.
I was like, is publicity really for me? And she's like, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But Anabel, why don't you tell us how you got your start?
Oh gosh, how do I go after that? So much like you, I didn't know what I wanted to study in school, but I knew I loved books. So I was like, okay, English major, right? And then, everyone says English majors, you're never going to find a job.
Right.
You're never,
Well, now you understand why I was in my faculty advisor's office like, hey, sis, we need to figure this out. What comes next?
Yeah, and I was just like, well, I don't know, this is all I've got. So I was like, oh, publishing, of course, let's do that. And then once I graduated from Lehman, I also do Bookstagram, so that's like Instagram, social media, and stuff. So marketing felt like a natural fit, and then I started SNS as a marketing assistant, and that was 4 years ago. I'm still at Simon & Schuster now.
What's your print?
A gallery. I'm at a gallery at SNS. Yes.
My girls over there.
Yes. So I've been there ever since, and yeah.
See, amazing. So what I'm hearing is none of us really thought it was possible.
Nope.
But we
Not
made it possible, right? And so I want those of you who want to, if you're aspiring to be in the publishing industry, you got professionals right here. Network with them after this panel, because the one thing I will say is publishing is about who you know.
Yep.
It's a who you know business.
Yep.
And everyone in there pretty much knows each other, or they know someone who knows someone who knows someone, or they've heard your name, or you know. And so it's this weird web of connection. And so going in, I was applying for jobs like mad. I was like, okay, I figured it out. I graduated. It's time for me to get a real job. I was hitting a wall.
Yeah.
I had done an internship, and unfortunately, I'm not out here making money, so I was working retail full time, and I didn't get to do as many internships as other people. And so I did one internship, okay, and I networked my ASS off. Okay, I was in there meeting people, and they have these wonderful brown bag lunches where people come to talk to you and stuff like that. So I networked as much as I could, and I landed my first job at Simon Schuster because I had my first internship there. And so I would love for you to talk about how you network and the power of networking. What was it like for you in your job search, right? Did someone put you on after you did these programs? You got your MFA. Dominique, you mentioned that you were taught by real life professionals. So did you leverage those connections? Let's talk about network and what that means, because that can translate into any industry.
But can I just say first, all three of y'all worked at Simon and I did not, and that was going to be my dream job. I don't hate y'all, but I hate y'all. But so I was in textiles before I went into publishing. I was in textiles for almost 10 years, and then found out about the PACE program. But network, oh yeah. I was like, and who do you know, and who do you know, and who do you know, and paid attention to like the information that would come over fax machine. I'm dating myself.
I know.
You understand me?
I do.
But and then talking to the professionals, what about this job, and what about this job, and what about this job? And they were like, yes, you can do this, and you can do this, and you can go from one industry to another as long as you know what you're doing.
Right.
So I went from sales and textiles to sales at Oxford University Press.
Right.
It's exactly the same thing. You're
same
just
skill set.
Right. You know what you're doing, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Look, at 35, it was scary as
Yes.
But having the people supporting me and my friends, right? Like the friends that were like, no, we're in publishing. Yes, we think you can do this. Yes, you can put yourself out there. Come for informational interviews. Those are really important. And so putting myself out there as an older person and a woman was really hard, but like having that network is really important, and maintain it. Don't burn your bridges, because to this day we all reach out to each other, and like I left one house to go to another house because I reached out to an editor that I was really good friends with, and I was like, so tell me about this job at Penguin, and she was like, oh no, this is what you need to do. Give me your resume, right? And things like that. Not being afraid to take the leap. And again, with the same, when I was let go from Penguin Random House, 2 different houses.
Yes.
But you have to not be afraid to network and reach out to your friends, your colleagues, librarians. They were like, what about this job? What about this job? Send me your resume for this job. And we keep in touch to this day. And I pay it forward. I never want to forget how people helped me, and I make sure to help other people, because that's what we do.
Absolutely. For me, networking is why I have a career. Essentially, I came to things like this.
Right.
I made sure that whenever there was anything publishing related that I had access to, I was there. And I'm not a shy person, can you tell? So I literally would go up to people, have conversations. Like if someone was going to be a panel, here I am Googling them. So that I can when I went up to them, I let them know that I see you. I know what you do. And I would, go to them and talk about a campaign and this and that, and I would give them my resume. I got a job because I was let go from my first job in publishing, and I was devastated. I was like, especially as a person of color, as an older person, I was like, I'm done. There's no way that I'm going to get another job, right? But I met Stacey Barney, who is an executive director, VP over at Penguin Random House right now. And I met her at Medgar Evers. And I went up to her, gave her my resume, gave her the whole speech, and told her, I really wanted, to get back into publicity. So she doesn't even remember this, which is so funny. This was like March. She kept my resume, and when the position came up at Amistad in their a publicity assistant position, she handed my resume to Gilda Squire, who is also a very dear friend, and Gilda called me. And then, one thing led to another. I was there for a year and a half, and then when it was time for Simon & Schuster, again, because of networking and doing a good job, guys. It's like, it's so important, like you were saying about burning bridges.
Don't burn 'em.
When you get in there, nail what you do. Because, you know, especially as a person of color, I can't do what other people do, if you know what I mean. You know, while I saw other people sitting down, I would see them on you know, on shopping online,
Look.
you know, on the phone and stuff like that. And I look at them like, okay, well, here I was always looking for something to do. And that's what helped me, because when another job came up at Simon Schuster, by the time I got called in for the interview, I'll never forget, my boss said, well, you must be something special because 3 people have told me about you.
And that's how you do it.
Okay? And I knew when I walked out of that room, I had that job. And I was there for, you know, for 13 years. So, you know, don't be afraid to have conversations with people. I can't tell you how many times people call me and say, oh my God, Yona, I'm looking for a new assistant. Do you know anybody good? You know, and I always tell my students, send me your resume, because that's a real thing. Because a lot of times, you know, especially when assistant positions open, you know how many resumes HR gets? They get flooded. So if you have somebody who's on the inside that can kind of put you at the, you know, at the top of the pile, you know, that can help you at least get the, you know, the interview. And after that, it's on you.
Yep.
You got to go there and
True.
shine and get that job and claim that job. But at the
Exactly.
very least, you get the opportunity to do so. And networking is what helps get you in that door a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, similar to you, I feel like the only reason I have my job is because of networking.
Yeah.
When I was still at my last semester in college, and I went to a panel at PRH. I think it was like one of those brown bag panels or something.
Yeah.
And I went there, and at the end of the panel, I was like, I'm looking for a job after this. So right after that, Kelsey Manning, who's at PRH now, I DM'd her on Instagram because we were friends, and I was like, hey, like, I'm graduating, like, I really need a job, and that's just how it happened. But yeah, I think that networking and just like who you know is so important in publishing than I think any other like industry.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from each of these panelists, of course, network, right? It's all about who you know. But Dominique mentioned a support system, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yona sort of mentioned a support system, right?
Yeah.
Like, these people supported me to get this job because
exactly.
they already recommended me, right?
Yeah.
They already told this person about me before I even entered the door, right? And I love what Anabel is saying, because in this day and age, you have access. When I was, you know, looking for someone to hire me 10, 12 years ago,
media.
social media wasn't
Wasn't
as
a thing.
big
It was not a thing.
or as accessible as it is now.
Yeah.
And so the power of social media is real, but I will say, please respect people's inboxes, because I get some crazy DMs, and that does not mean that I don't like you and I don't want to respond to you, but give yourself grace, right? Be polite.
Yes.
Hit them up once, hit them up twice,
And then-
hit them
and
up
then
3
done.
times, and then don't do it no more.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's my rule in publicity. I'm gonna follow up 3 times.
Same.
They don't hit me back, that's an automatic pass, right? And it's no hard feelings. I want to open it up to audience questions, because I have so many other questions for you all, but I know that there's probably really great audience questions. So does anyone have any questions?
Don't be
Okay.
shy, y'all. You know we're not.
Nana Kwame in the
At
back.
all.
Absolutely. So the question is, there was something that took place in 2020, hashtag Publishing Paid Me, which was created by 2 black authors, and this is important to mention. It was 2 black authors, Tochi Onyebuchi and
Kinney.
L.L. McKinney, yes. And so this sort of put a huge spotlight on what
Sort of.
publishers
Sort of.
it put a major spotlight. It pulled back the curtain. It showed how the sausage was made unfairly for particularly authors of color. And so the prompt was non-black authors show your advance receipts.
Yep.
And so what that means is, if you were a person of color but didn't identify as black, you could participate. But of course, there was some confusion. So mostly white people did it, but then other black writers started to tweet out what their advances were. And so this prompt showed how poorly
Yeah.
writers of color were being paid in the industry. And then, people like Roxanne Gay, Nana Kwame, actually, who's on a panel, so you might want to ask him a question about this. He disclosed his advance. I'll let him speak about it, but was able to renegotiate. And I feel like that was major because that was a shift in the industry. It's sort of unheard of for writers to renegotiate their contract after it's signed. So he's on the panel. You might want to ask him how that happened. But to answer your question, and I would love for you all to chime in too, on the flip side, there were discussions about salary and what how are we being paid? And I think, of course, we all know entry-level salaries are low. But for me, I was already past entry-level, and I still feel like I'm underpaid, but we ain't going to go there. And so it got us talking about it. Like, hey, look what these authors, they're showing their receipts. They're showing how much they're getting paid for advances. It's pretty crappy. And then, people started chattering. And if you remember in 2020, and if you were on book Twitter, you kind of saw there was an anonymous survey that went out showcasing what book workers were paid. There were some employee walkouts from some publishers, not specifically related to salaries, but other, things that were happening in the workplace that book workers sort of felt empowered. We felt like if these writers can speak up, the employees should be speaking up as well. And so 2020 was a very interesting year. There was so much stuff that happened, but thank you for bringing that up, and I'm going to turn it over to my panelists so you guys can chime in.
But the waves are still continuing. What I will say is, and this is advice that I give to a lot of the people that my colleagues and friends in the office, right? Don't stop. The conversation started and it was necessary.
Yeah.
And the shifts that happened, y'all.
Yes.
It made, I can't speak for the other houses. I can speak for mine.
Right.
And the conversation is still ongoing, and we're still fighting to make sure that the salaries are even for authors and for those of us that work, right? But the corner is being turned. It's like so effing slow.
Yeah.
But it's being turned, right? And the fact that the curtain came off and that people were willing to see it go, you should have been doing it before.
Yeah.
Okay, you're doing it now, and this is great. So the corner is being turned. It's going to continue, but we have to keep going, right? It's nice that it's happening. Do I feel like I'm getting paid what I should? No, I should probably be getting paid more. But the corner is being turned. So I will say, from when I started to now, the disparity is so different, right? Like it's very different. If I were coming into publishing now, entry level, compared to before, it's better. It's better. Could it be even better? Yes.
Better.
I love it.
Look, if you could
Could be
spell
a lot
it,
better,
it's a
yes.
word.
That's right.
But Yona, before you go, I would love for you to share what your starting salary was and the year that you started in publishing, just so they have an idea.
Remember, I started really late. My starting salary was 32. And no, when did I start at OUP? 2002? Yeah. No, but I started in 2002, and my starting salary was $32,000.
2002, 30,000.
Yep.
Yona,
It's 30,000.
and what year?
I want to say 2004.
Oh, look, it didn't change at all.
2-year difference.
Mm-hmm.
I started in 2018, and it was the same.
Your salary was how much?
32.
And you're at
Yes.
Simon Schuster?
Yeah, at SNS, and that was just in 2018.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Well, then that's interesting because when I started in 2011 or 2012, it was $33K. And I was negotiating with Joy Pertan. I don't know if she's out in these audience streets, but Joy has been at Simon & Schuster for a long time. And I was like, hey, sis, 33, that's not going to cut it. Can we negotiate? And she was like, jokes, Saraciea, you cannot negotiate a starting salary.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, okay. So I learned something about the publishing industry that day.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of publishers now that are disclosing what their entry-level salaries
Yeah.
are. And I
Yeah.
believe all of them are now in the upper 40s.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make it level so that all the houses are
About the same. Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
say one of them that's higher, bigger in the house. But
Yona,
Yeah.
Anabel, do you want to add anything about the Publishing Paid Me
Oh, girl.
before I go into the next question for the audience?
Girl. I mean, I know for me personally, I definitely was underpaid. I always knew that. But you said something about negotiation. I think if I leave you guys with anything, is to advocate for yourselves. They have money, okay? Because I know that there were other colleagues that would ask for more and they would get more. I was in that position, for so many years where I was so grateful to be there, so that, when they gave me a promotion that I busted my behind to get, I felt like, you know what, I don't want to make waves. Let me just take this promotion and take the money that they gave me and just keep it pushing. Advocate for yourselves, guys.
Yes.
And the thing is, I was at Simon & Schuster for 13 years. 13 years, and I know that actually hurt me because my raises were incremental.
Right.
Whereas if I had left and went somewhere else and came back to Simon & Schuster, I'm sure my salary would have been much higher.
Yeah.
And just on the flip side, just talking about the publishing paid me in terms of what I saw before I left at Simon & Schuster. The only shift that I saw is that it gave me more leverage to fight for budgets for these authors. Because even though I left before all of that, but even prior to, there was still a conversation about equity.
Yes.
It's like, wait a minute, how come you have two authors and they pretty much have similar platforms? One is white and one is of color. You want to throw $10,000 on the white author, and I can barely get a poster for my black author.
Right. Yeah.
So I did see that start to change, and thankfully I worked in a very diverse imprint, so I was able to have conversations with my publisher and say, hey, you need to give me a little bit of money for this. And 9 times out of 10, she would give it to me. So, but that's not always what it is in these publishing houses. Sometimes they give you a budget or they give you none, and there's nothing you can do about it, to change it. So.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I did just want to say that there's been such a shift since 2020, and you can even see it. Like when I first started at SNS at Gallery in 2018, it was just me and another person of color in the imprint.
Yeah.
And it, you feel just like walking around, you don't see anyone who looks like you, who you don't feel a sense of belonging.
Right.
And then now there's 5 people of color in the imprint, and that's just since I started
That's huge.
4 years
Yeah.
ago.
Because they were
Yeah.
very white
Very
for
white.
years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All facts. I could go on, but I want to get to the audience questions. Yes, you have a question? First question is visual art and publishing. How can you sort of work in the industry? And then the second part is as women of color, basically how are we surviving working in publishing? So I'll start really quickly. Visual artists, you actually can work with a lot of creative directors at publishing. They hire a lot of freelancers. Whether it's graphic design for marketing, so Anabel can probably talk a little bit about that. And in the art department, so the beautiful covers that you see, those are usually by various different artists. And then there's a creative director in the publishing house who sort of works with you and say like, hey, add these figures, or we were thinking hand lettering, and so they do some things, but we really rely on other artists. So visual artists, graphic artists, those things, they really do create wonderful book covers. And how am I surviving as a woman of color? I want to go back to the networking and the supporting, because that brings me joy. The other thing that brings me joy is working on books that I love. So I'm a huge reader. I love speculative fiction, select nonfiction, poetry, all of that. And so I find working with writers that I really admire, or debut writers whose works I'm really jazzed about, that passion fuels me when the microaggressions are happening in the workplace, when people are confusing me with another black woman in the workplace, or not knowing that I'm Honduran, and maybe talking about some racist Latinx things that are happening in the world, and etc. And so I have all of these different isms that I tell people about, right? So racism, ageism. Like there are all of these isms because I look like I'm a child. I look like I'm 12 years old, and I'm actually excited about that. So when I'm 60 and 70, I'm gonna still look great.
Exactly.
But the downside of that is I walk into these meetings and people are like, oh, why should I listen to Saraciea? And I get that a lot.
Yeah.
And I am from the Bronx. And so I take that scruffy, you know, you're not going to tell me I don't belong in this room or I can't do this thing. And I just let it roll right off my back. Does it make me upset? Absolutely, 1,000%. But if I give energy to that, it's going to make me depressed. And so what I do is I'm like, cool. I see you. I see what you're doing. But guess what? I'm still here. And I'm still going to say whatever it is that I want to say. You may not listen to me. You may not, like, you know, change how you engage with me when I flag to you and say that thing you said was really uncomfortable or racist or whatever. But I like to address it head on. And it took me a long time to get to that point. I won't sit here and say, oh, I entered the industry and came like this. No, you know what I went through.
Yes, I do.
Because, like I said, she was my mentor, so I was always in her office. But she's like, listen, hang in there, and, you know, don't be afraid to speak up.
Yep.
I am a human being, and you need to respect me. We may not get along outside of work, but in the office, I can be cordial. That doesn't mean we have to be BFFs, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Anabel?
Yeah, well, I would say to your first question, ad promo design teams at these companies. So at SNS, we have an entire ad promo design team. They have a team full of designers. So that's something. And then to your second question, I would say just community within like your workplace and about all of these changes that have been going on. Like at SNS, we've sort of developed these diversity heads who we meet, you know, seasonally to like talk about things, but they're also our friends. We have them on Slack when you just want to go and be like, oh my God, did you hear this? Oh my God. Like you need those people, those friends that you're working with to sort of just like keep you sane. But
yeah, you're like, let me put this in the group chat.
Right.
I'm gonna take it off the work chat. It's going in the text chain like, yo,
We have
John is bugging today. He is
Exactly.
on one.
We have a G chat at work,
Exactly.
and in our G chat, no higher ups are in that G chat because it is a safe space that we created, or that was created, but then we created to make sure that we have. But I digress. So to your first question, also, independent. We're always looking for assets to give to our stores to use for books for promotion. So as a visual arts, we're always looking for people that can design things that we can use for books. So we can give those to our stores to use as assets online. There are always book promotions that we're looking for assets for. So your skills, and I said it earlier, are very transferable. Don't be afraid to use them and let people know what you do and how you do it. Even if all you do is go on book Twitter and be like, this is what I created. Somebody's gonna look at that and they're gonna say, oh, what is your name? Tyru. They're gonna be like, oh, Tyru did this. I need to reach out to Tyru because I want you to come do this for me. That's gonna open your door. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and show what you do. To the second point, when I was in publishing, there was not a lot of this at all. I'm a Latina. I'm a Black Latina, right? There was not a lot of this at all.
Nope.
I had to learn to walk in like a boss. And I tell my colleagues and my friends that are this, you walk in like you own the place, right? You are the boss of that company. Do your job. Do it well because you're a boss. If people don't like it, fuck them. Excuse my language.
Okay.
But I'm also from the Bronx, right? So, but also look for this, which I did. But don't exclude your friends that are not this. Because I called out my friend Noah. Noah and I have been friends for years, right? When I started at Macmillan, Saraciea and I connected. We just because we did, right? You look for people.
I saw her. I said, oh, hey, Tommy. She said, oh, you're from the Bronx. You're from the Bronx. That's it.
And that's what happened, and you know. But don't learn to take your fear and use it. And when you don't be afraid to cry. Go in the bathroom, get your cry on, and then walk out. And you're a boss, and you're a woman boss. Do your thing.
Yes. Yona, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would definitely say, you know, to your first question, on the flip side, there are a lot of a lot of authors that are publishing independently. So there's that as well, because there's a lot of people who, for whatever reason, are either not being acquired by the major publishers or are specifically deciding that they want to self-publish. You can design covers for them. You can design assets for them as well, because I know a ton of people that have ideas, but they don't have the skill set to actually do it themselves. So there's a lot of people where, they come to me, they're like, I need a really good, a strong cover, for my book. Because we all know that, what's the first thing that attracts you when you pick up a book before you even know anything about it? It's the cover. If something is striking to you, you're going to pick it up. And if you pick it up and you read about it, 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up buying the book. But the cover is what draws you. So there's a sea of independent authors that are looking for people like you to design things, for them. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, like, when I was coming up, there was no Facebook. There was no, so there wasn't that community for me. So what I did over the years is you just FaceTime with people, like having coffees and meeting up with people. And a lot of the people that I met very early in my career, I'm still friends with them today. So when I launched my company, I can't even tell you how many people were texting me, DMing me, and saying, what can I do to help support you? Because I supported them when, they were that small little blog that nobody wanted to send a review copy to because they just thought they wanted free books, and I would work with them. And now that I've launched on my own, I still maintain those relationships. So when I have an author that I'm looking for to get a book review or to do like a book club type of event or something like that, I reach out to those same people that I've known for I'm in the biz now 17 years, and those are the same people now that are coming to support. So I can't tell you. So I commiserate with them. They complain. They come to me when they have issues and asking me, well, what can I do? How can I do? How do I navigate this system? And that's how I survive. So to this day, I know I can call so many people that I worked with 15 years ago, and we're still friends, to this day.
I love that. We have time for maybe one more question. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You said we can't. Are people of color writers? Sure. Survival tips for writers of color.
Oh boy.
Go ahead, Anabel. I'll have Anabel take that one.
Yeah, I would just say my first tip would be to find an agent. Yes. That would be the first goal. Find an agent that you feel really connected to, that you feel will champion you and your book to these publishing houses, because often, and I think maybe all publishing houses will not acquire without an agent. So that would be number one. Yeah.
Okay. And just to give you some resources really quickly, because I think we're going to end after this, you can check out latinxinpublishing.com. They have a list that has agents of color, Latinx agents specifically, white agents as well. So do your due diligence, do your own research. Then there's POC agents. That's a way for you to find it. And if you want to do an added thing, look at the favorite books that you have on your shelf and read the acknowledgement section. They always include their entire publishing team. So that's one of my prides about working in the industry. Yes. When you're like, oh, it's a hard day, go and read the back of an acknowledgement. It's like, thank you, Saraciea, for doing all of the things. And I'm like, that part, that's why I'm here.
This is why we do what we do.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So if each of you could just say where people can reach you on social media, just in case if they, want to tap in and DM or maybe tweet at you. So we'll start with Dominique and then just go down the line.
I usually on Instagram a lot. I'm at doc_bunny604. Please feel free to DM me. I am also on LinkedIn. Y'all, network with me. I am happy to work with you to answer questions. If I don't know, I will find out who you can talk to. And I'm on Facebook, Dominique R. Jenkins.
Awesome.
Well, I am on a couple of different things. You can find me as a Yona Riverchild. That's actually not my last name, but people think it is. on Facebook, on Instagram, you can follow me on Riverchild Media, or DTROFOSHUN. On Instagram and Twitter as well. But I really don't do Twitter. It's mostly Instagram and Facebook for me.
Right.
Yeah, it's mostly Instagram for me too. Anabel's Corner, ANABEL.
Wow. as a publicist, I need y'all to simplify your handles. Because thankfully we are recording this, so check out the Bronx is Reading YouTube page to like replay and pause to get that information. But my social media across every single platform is SJ_Fennell. Thank you so much for listening to this wonderful panel. Hey, Lewis, can I borrow you? Can I have the panelists stand? We're just going to take a quick photo, and then